Hello and welcome to Insight Magazine. July 18, 1994, 85 people were killed and hundreds more wounded by a terrorist bomber at the Buenos Aires Jewish Community Center. To this day, it remains the deadliest bombing in Argentinian history. After a 20-year investigation, including an 11-year trial, no perpetrator was brought to justice. But a new investigation that began in 2004 found that the highest-ranking members of the Iranian government at the time of the bombing were responsible for the attack. In response, Interpol issued a red alert warrant for the Iranians. While the government in Iran refused to cooperate, little could be done. Meanwhile, the situation has become more complicated, as within Argentina, the issue now sees the government and its political motives up against the constitution and the legal system. The Argentinian government has introduced a memorandum of understanding with the Iranians, a stark change of policy towards the bombing. But those involved in the investigation say there's no question of who was behind the attack, as over 1 million pages of evidence provide a clear picture. Our producer, Carlos Gurovich, went to Buenos Aires and met with the key figures involved in the investigation and brought cameras inside the archive of evidence for the first time. Well, here's the story as Argentina and Iran dance an explosive tango.
The popular motto says it takes two to tango. But for the last 20 years, Iran and Argentina have been dancing an explosive tango together, from which neither side can shake themselves loose. For the first time in the 20-year history of the AMIA affair, a television camera has gotten access to the archives of the investigation, led by Special Attorney Alberto Nisman.
Here, as you can see, here are all the files, the entire investigation, the entire material on which we are working every day.
1,200,000 pages, hundreds of reports piled up, thousands of complaints, testimonies, wiretaps, sorted and organized, 2 decades of investigations. An investigation scattered with new developments, a complex investigation which regularly makes headlines in the Argentine press, arousing controversy and anger among the local population. This country, which hosts the largest Jewish community in Latin America, suffered the deadliest bombing in its history in 1994. A car bomb exploded in front of a building in the heart of Buenos Aires, the building that hosts the AMIA, or Jewish Community Center. Argentina is in shock. 85 people have been killed, 230 wounded. Very quickly, an investigation was launched, and initial evidence pointed the finger at Hezbollah as the perpetrator of the attack, and Iran as its sponsor.
Based on the investigation of the state prosecutor, we arrive not at a conclusion, but at signs, at some proof that a certain section of the Iranian community was behind these attacks.
However, what reasons did Iran have to attack Argentina, one of its most important trading partners in Latin America, particularly in the nuclear domain? In 1991, President Menem decides to withdraw from the Organization of Non-Aligned Countries, and under pressure from Washington, Buenos Aires breaks off its nuclear cooperation agreements with Iran. The transfer of nuclear technology is suspended and subsequently canceled. According to the investigators, the bombing was a type of punishment from Tehran, a theory supported by numerous experts, as affirmed by Paula Bota, an expert in Argentine-Iran relations.
Argentina made a very precise calculation. The transfer of nuclear technology would cause bad relations with the United States and therefore had to be suspended. And so that was what happened in December 91 and January 92, the unilateral suspension by Argentina of its nuclear contracts with Iran.
As the investigation progressed, proof of Iran's implication in the attack accumulated. Interpol issues red alerts to enable the extradition to Argentina of 8 high-ranking Iranian officials, including former President Hashemi Rafsanjani. But in Buenos Aires, as more and more irregularities surface in the investigation, headed until then by Judge Galeano, the investigation itself becomes a source of controversy. The Argentine Supreme Court confirms the irregularities and numerous procedural errors. The investigation is declared null and void. A new investigation unit is established to look into the AMIA affair, with Alberto Nisman as special attorney, but 10 years have been lost and everything will have to begin again from scratch.
We carried out very in-depth research, examined all the documents, all the wiretaps and files. We started all over again from zero. After 1.5 years of work, we published in October 2006 our very first, very complete 800-page report in which we concluded that the attack was organized, planned, and financed by the highest authorities in the Islamic Republic of Iran. To be more precise, the decision was taken almost 1 year beforehand in the Iranian city of Mashhad in August 1993 during a meeting attended by, for example, President Rafsanjani, former head of Iranian intelligence Ala Falahian, and Chancellor Velayati, head of the Revolutionary Guard.
El canciller Velayati, el jefe de la Guardia Revolucionaria, en ese entonces Rezaji.
You'll remember him as he was a candidate in the last Iranian presidential elections. He represented a group called Al-Quds, which was in charge of carrying out terrorist operations on behalf of Iran abroad, led by Ahmad Vahidi.
Terroristas iraníes en el exterior, en ese entonces a cargo de Ahmad Vahidi.
Tehran exploits the issue of irregularities in the Argentine investigation, and Iranian authorities succeed in getting Interpol's red alerts suspended. It took another 2 years before Interpol recognized the admissibility of new evidence found by Special Attorney Nisman's investigation.
In 2007, during Interpol's General Assembly, which was held in Marrakesh, Morocco, the presence of Special Attorney Nisman and his presentation of legal proof in the affair helped us obtain 78 votes in favor of reissuing the red alerts, 14 against, and 26 abstentions. The alerts were for 5 individuals: Ali Falkhani, Muhsen Rabbani, Muhsen Rezai, Ahmad Reza Ashgari, and Ahmad Vahidi.
However, Tehran continued to deny its implication in the attacks and refused to cooperate, thus blocking any possible progress. In the face of this impasse and 18 years after the attack, Argentina opts for a new strategy, a political strategy at the expense of the judicial process. After months of talks between Buenos Aires and Tehran, the two countries signed an agreement authorizing a revision of the investigation. The respective parliaments of the two countries have to ratify the creation of a Commission of Truth, composed of 5 jurists of international renown and assigned to study all the evidence on the attack. The conclusions will be given not to the legal authorities, but to the Argentine and Iranian governments. News of this commission immediately aroused a wave of criticism in Buenos Aires.
Denounce this treaty. It's a mess, a disgrace and totally unacceptable. Iran doesn't care a hoot about what the Argentinians think, which is to carry out justice. It is total madness. The Argentine judiciary has stated that the attack was the work of the Iranian government and its highest-placed leaders are suspects. Consequently, it is impossible for any positive result to emerge from an agreement with this country.
In a conference hall filled with representatives from political parties, Jewish organizations, and families of victims of the attack, Minister of Foreign Affairs Hector Timerman defended the position of the Argentine government.
The sole reason behind this agreement is to carry out justice for the AMIA victims. So, you do not need to criticize or censor. Our primary objective is to seek the truth, carry out justice, and preserve the memory.
Despite great opposition, the Argentine National Congress voted in favor of the agreement in the space of 48 hours. For Special Attorney Nisman, who's headed the investigation for over a decade, the truth already exists in the thousands of piles of proof lying in his archives. In his view, the Commission of Truth is nothing more than a political commission that violates the terms of the Argentinian Constitution and represents wholesale interference on the part of the executive in the judicial process.
We do not know who will be in this commission or what they are going to say, but we know in advance that it will be the truth because it has been given this name, and whatever happens, there is no judicial supervision. It is a purely political organ.
Hassan Rouhani comes to power in Iran. The Iranian nuclear program becomes the main issue, and negotiations begin with world powers. During this time, Argentina waits for the Iranian parliament to ratify the creation of the Commission of Truth.
Ahora esperamos que nos digan si se ha aprobado el acuerdo.
We are waiting for you to tell us if you have approved the agreement or when you are going to approve it. We need to have a date for the approval of the Commission, as well as a date for when the Argentine judge can go to Tehran.
Para que el juez argentino.
Yes, to Tehran. We are not scared. We shall go to Tehran.
20 years have passed. The AMIA building has been rebuilt, but the wound left by the bombing has not healed. 20 years have passed, and the issue is still the same in the minds of many Argentinians. Will justice ever be reached?
I thought that one day we would know the truth. I now think that it is going to be very difficult.
Will there ever be justice?
I don't think there will be justice, at least not the one we hope for.
We know the truth, at least a great part of it. The question is whether we shall obtain justice. I believe we shall, and that these individuals will be judged, and it is for this reason that we are fighting. I cannot tell you when it will happen, but I am certain of this.
As judgment for the Iranian culprits remains elusive, Argentina and Iran continue to spin together like two tango dancers. They turn and turn, and the victims of the attack continue to wait for truth to be revealed in its full light, or for it to be buried forever in the obscurity of justice.
Joined in the studio by our producer, Carlos Gurovich. Carlos, thanks for being with us.
Hello, David.
So I have to ask you, why did the Argentinian government sign this memorandum of understanding with the Iranians?
It is important to understand that for years, the Argentine government has requested that Iran allow the extradition of the suspects to be put on trial in Argentina. But now they have made a strategic change and have passed from the juridical request to a political demand, and for that purpose, Argentina and Iran signed this 9-point agreement that creates the Commission of Truth to review the entire case and pose questions to the suspects. But this questioning will not have any legal value. For the Argentine government, this is a great step forward, big progress. But for the attorney Nisman, the opposition parties, the members of the Jewish community, and the relatives of the victims of the attack, this is a big step backwards. The memorandum can be declared unconstitutional, and that will lead the entire investigation nowhere, leaving 85 dead victims and no one held accountable.
What's the current status of the investigation?
The investigation
is in the hands of the special attorney Alberto Nisman, and as we saw, he has in his archives 1,200,000 pages of evidence that point to the highest authorities of the Iranian regime. Now that the Iranians have signed this memorandum, he's waiting for them to cooperate, but in fact nothing has occurred. We saw President Kirchner in the UN Assembly asking Rouhani about the agreement and when they can go to Tehran.
¿Cuándo van a firmar? ¿Cuándo podremos ir a Teherán?
What about the status of this Interpol's red alert warrant for these Iranians?
El tema de la Interpol es muy interesante. Argentina consiguió que en el año 2004...
The situation with Interpol is very interesting. Argentina succeeded to convince Interpol in 2004 to issue international arrest warrants, known as red alerts, meaning that if one of the suspects enters a foreign country, he must be detained. However, Iran gave them diplomatic passports. The most significant case we had was a couple years ago when Ahmad Vahidi, the Minister of Defense in Ahmadinejad's government at the time, was in Bolivia, standing beside the president, and wasn't detained. Some Bolivian citizens died in the attack. The criticism was huge, and Vahidi was politely asked to leave the country.
Le pidieron cordialmente que se retire.
Do you think that real truth and justice can ever be reached in this case?
Es una pregunta muy difícil de responder.
That's a hard question to answer. Most of the people related to the case said they do not believe that one day truth will become known. It is really hard. 20 years have passed. The Iranians never cooperated and still demand that Interpol to end the red alerts. Justice? What kind of justice? Justice will be done when those people will be brought to trial and prove they are not guilty. The Special Attorney Nisman believes the opposite. He says we already know the truth. Most of that truth is in the hands as we saw it, and he is convinced that one day the Iranian suspects will be brought to trial and justice will be achieved. He still is fighting for that. The question is if it will be necessary to wait another 20 years.
Well, again, Carlos, thank you for bringing us this story today.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for watching us here in Inside Magazine. We'll see you here next week at the same time.